No Tommy Eichenberg, no problem. Steele Chambers is wasting no time making a name for himself, showing everyone that he can lead the Ohio State defense, and he's separating himself from everybody else in Ohio State's linebacker room.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Buckeye fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Buckeyes, part of Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jay Stephens, also the host of the Jay Stephens Podcast. It is Tuesday, March 28th in the year 2023, and I want to thank you for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen or first watch of every single day. During this episode, we will discuss how we should all view Ohio State scrimmage over the weekend and why Brice Sensabaugh recently made a wise decision about his future. But before we get to any of that, Steele Chambers is a player that kind of gets overlooked, and his play is overshadowed by the play of Tommy Eichenberg. Eichenberg's absence during spring practice allows Steele Chambers to play a different role and even maybe a bigger role during these 15 practices. And Steele Chambers is one. I like him. I loved him when he was running back. Unfortunately, an injury ended the season abruptly, and ultimately he changed positions to get on the field more. And that, to me, is one of the best decisions he has made at Ohio State. And that decision alone, and him going into year two of being a starter at Ohio State, a consistent starter, I think that combination is what's going to help him continue to separate himself from the rest of the pack. Steele Chambers is one of those guys over the weekend when you're thinking about a scrimmage, and a scrimmage where the quarterbacks are going to get a lot of attention due to the fact that they're competing to be the starter. Kyle McCord, Devin Brown, they're all competing. And so Steele Chambers knows. Normally, Eichenberg is the one calling the shots, roaming the defense, getting the plays in, things of that nature. It's all on me now. It's literally all on my shoulders to be the leader at this group now. He's still playing Will. The Mike linebacker is going to be an individual who's going to be a backup in the season. But Steele Chambers still realizes just because Eichenberg's not out there, that doesn't mean I can still play the same role I played a year ago. No, I need to play a bigger role and maybe more of a vocal role, and even show the coaches, hey, man, I can get this job done. If Eichenberg's not on the field, I can still play good football. I can still be consistent, and I can still be a guy you want to rely on during crucial moments in football games. Over the weekend, during Saturday scrimmage, Steele Chambers wasted no time making plays. He had blew up numerous plays in the backfield, had a couple sacks, had a very crucial pass breakup on a pass intended to chip train him. And I think, and I'm wondering, out of all the guys on Ohio State's defense, there's questions at deep tackle, questions that really not so much a question, but does Jack Sawyer take the next step when he's only playing one position? Or is it Caden Curry or Kenyatta Jackson or Amari Abel? Or are they the ones to step up and be the opposite defensive end, opposite of JT Tuimoloau? There's numerous questions at defensive back. Really, there aren't many at linebacker, but you want to know, who is the best player on Ohio State's defense right now? You might want to say Tuimoloau based off Eichenberg, best player in spring practice. You might say Tuimoloau based off Eichenberg's injury, but do I want to say Lathan Ransom? No. Do I want to say Joshua Proctor? No. Do I want to say Denzel Burke? No. Igmanosin? No. It might simply be Steele Chambers is the best player on the Ohio State defense right now during spring practice. And from things that I have heard from what happened during the scrimmage over the weekend, it sounds like he's playing like Ohio State's best defensive player. Imagine what we saw a year ago with Eichenberg. Eichenberg gets healthy. Tommy Two Thumbs gets those things healed. And you get Eichenberg at one linebacker. You get Steele Chambers at another. Remember in a 4-2-5, You don't so much have the Mike, the Will, and the occasional Sam if you go 3 linebacker set. No, the 4-2-5, these guys are primarily doing a lot of similar things. Now, one might play more strong side, one might play more weak side, but at the really quickly, there could be, I need to play the Mike, I need to play the Will, and I need to know my role. I believe Steele Chambers does that. I believe he knows that. And I firmly believe that him playing defense right now, being a linebacker at the Ohio State University, is going to put him in a great spot at the end of the season to be a day 2 pick in the NFL draft. Because I think I do believe Steele Chambers has a future playing football professionally as a linebacker in the National Football League. Ultimately, if that doesn't work out, you have the XFL, you have the USFL, you have other leagues out there that you can make money playing the football at professionally. But to me, I still believe Steele Chambers is that guy. And for any defense, when you have questions, as many questions as Ohio State has right now, DN, D tackle, DB, safety, nickel corner, cover safety, regular corner, whatever. All the questions that Ohio State's defense has right now, the one position that they don't really have any questions is that linebacker. The only question that you might have about this team, does C.J. Hicks get on the field? Because he's a better player than somebody else. Not because of the higher ceiling. We're not talking about the higher ceiling here. We're talking about currently constructed better player. If these two players are even, if Steele Chambers is an even player, if he's the same player as a sophomore, you might see the sophomore play because he's younger. He has more time. And a lot of coaches out there, the experience is one thing, but some coaches, they want to go out there and play. If the younger player is even with an older player, you play the younger player because you're going to get more out of that younger player over the next few years and you're going to get that production longer. So I'm a Steele Chambers guy. If you can't tell by the start of today's show, I'm a Steele Chambers guy. And I believe Ohio State's linebacker situation is a whole lot better than it was a year ago. And ultimately, I am comfortable. I am so comfortable saying Steele Chambers, if he keeps developing like he has been, like he's playing right now, teams in the Big Ten might not be ready for what Ohio State brings to the table at the LB position in 2023. 2023 is going to be a big year for Ohio State, and it's going to be a big year a lot because of what we're seeing right now during Ohio State's scrimmage over the weekend. We can learn some things over the weekend, and also we should have the proper mindset about what we're witnessing or reading about or listening about or maybe even watching as well. That was a lot to say in a short period of time. How should we view this time of year, especially the scrimmage? We discuss it next right here on Locked on Buckeyes. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The tournament is heating up, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That's because right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and sign up today to claim your no-sweat first bet. Then you can wager on everything from the money line to point spreads to which team will be cutting down the net. All on the app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So don't miss your chance at a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. Make every moment more with FanDuel. Ohio State scrimmage over the weekend, it's fun. It was a lot of fun to hear about, read about the things that went down during that day, seeing the good reports about Gabe Powers and Kyle McCord and Devin Brown and C.J. Hicks and other players that are at Ohio State, Steele Chambers being one of them. I love hearing and reading about the good reports from a scrimmage. But many of us have been around and watched sports for a long period of time, and you may say, Jay, I have the proper mindset about a scrimmage, about a practice this time of year. Great, cool, that's great. What about everybody else? Or maybe there were times that even I learned this myself. we need to kind of alter how we approach a certain event. Some of us are going to read into the spring game. Some people are going to read into fall camp. Some are going to read into the game week 4 of the season, which actually I do believe might not actually be a game. I want to say that's the bye week. So you're not going to read into any game. You're going to read into the Notre Dame game. Read into all these things. There's a proper mindset we need going from March to April to July to October, knowing how to progress and how things that happen right now allow us to kind of somewhat predict what can happen in the fall, but what can happen, not what's going to happen. A scrimmage right now, and I heard over the weekend there were times that Kyle McCord and Devin Brown, some are going with, sometimes McCord was with the ones, sometimes he was with the twos. When it mattered, there was a time Devin Brown was with the ones, McCord was with the twos. Quarter later in the scrimmage as the score kept getting updated and closer and closer and closer. There may be times that Ryan Day puts a certain quarterback with the backups to simply see how his mindset is, to simply see how he handles a different situation, to simply see how he handles working with a different offensive line or working with players that will not be starters in Ohio State. They're talented, but will not be starters in the fall. There will be times that you're trying to see simply the mentals and the mental aspect, the leadership qualities and attributes that a player has. You put a quarterback in a situation to kind of test him out and view and see, is he made of the right stuff? Like, ultimately, we're all looking for things like, oh, who's going to be the starter? The depth chart. I got my hierarchy. I got my 3 deep. I ain't going 2 deep. I'm going one step further. I got a 3 deep depth chart right here. I got quarterback 1, QB 2. Only one that's concrete is Tristan Jebbia of the Oregon State transfer. He is QB 3. I got that 3 deep. Okay, cool. Great. But this time of year really isn't all about like the hierarchy. Sometimes it's about testing you. And at the end of spring practice, there's a good chance Ryan Day doesn't have the depth chart intact, concrete, a 2 deep, maybe even a 3 deep. There's a good chance it's not there. Why? Because there's a lot of time between April 15th and the start of the season, Labor Day weekend. There's a lot of time between now and then. There's a lot of time. There's a lot of recruiting that's going to happen. There are a lot of workouts that will be completed. There will be another session of sequences of practices prior to the start of the season. And you know what? View this as a time to get better. Let's all view this time of year as a time to work, a time of mental testing, I want to say. To test it the first time for Brian Hartline to simply call plays consistently. First time for Ryan Day since he's been at Ohio State as he head coach to be the overseer of the entire team and not have play calling duties during practice or during his sequence of practices. First time for him. First time for a guy like Steele Chambers to be maybe the best player on Ohio State's defense during practice. First time for Kyle McCord and Devin Brown to be in the midst of a quarterback competition. A lot of firsts that are going on. There are also some guys that have been around for a while that know they're going to be starters, but also how do they handle certain situations? Marvin Harrison Jr., does he get upset when he's taken out of reps with the ones during scrimmages or spring practice? Because over the weekend, there were numerous times that during live tackle sessions, Marvin Harrison Jr. was taken out. You understand. Many of us will understand why. It's better to preserve the body. And he's a player that's a concrete player. He's going to start. If he could go to the NFL right now, I do believe there are some that would say, Route Man Marv, go to the league. Don't stay in college. Go get that bag. The pro bag is way bigger, way larger, way heavier than that college bag. Go get that money, bruh. Go get your bread. A lot of people out there will be saying those things about Route Man Marv. Okay, great. But what about when he's matched up, not just being pulled out, but when he's matched up against a true freshman in Jermaine Matthews Jr., who is supposed to be in high school right now, but he's a spring enrollee, a spring semester early enrollee. How do you handle those situations? So a lot of it is not just like hierarchy. And yes, I do believe Ryan Day and the other coaches, they want to have a good grasp on the depth chart at the end of spring practice, but also find out what you're made of. And not just from those guys that are going to be consistent starters. What about Jermaine Matthews Jr.? Like, hello, how about we find out what he's made of? Now, everybody knows Marvin Harrison Jr. should beat Jermaine Matthews Jr. in every rep. Should. It's not going to happen. Not going to happen at all. I do actually believe that this was not a completed pass, but Jermaine Matthews Jr., he's going to compete. You want to see what these younger guys have. Now, I do believe, now I'm going to go to another quarterback, one that's not on campus. Lincoln Kienholz, if he was there right now, I would want to see how he competes against the team right now. Talented guy, three-sport athlete. I believe he's all-state in all three sports. I know he's all-state in football. I want to say all-state in basketball. I want to say he played in an all-star game for high school football in the beginning to the middle of January. I know he's playing baseball for his team as well. I believe Lincoln Kienholz is going to come in and kind of be someone, not a Swiss Army knife right away, but kind of someone that's going to be like the scout team quarterback that you wanted to get a mobile quarterback that can throw the ball a little bit. Lincoln Kienholz, get in there, run a scout team-o, and let's see how you operate. This is what this time of year is all about. Figuring out what players are about, figuring out what your team is all about, figuring out if you need to add some more pieces via the transfer portal. Because if you have not heard, there's another transfer portal window opening up, a 45-day window, I believe towards the end of April. After most spring practices have been completed, there's another transfer portal window that will be available. Now, your boy anticipates numerous players from Ohio State transferring. I wouldn't be shocked if there were 4 or 5 that enter the portal at the end of spring practice, maybe where they thought they're going to be on the depth chart and it's not where they currently are, and they say, I want to go elsewhere to play the football. So be it. Honestly, that happens. I remember was it Jacob Cowan a year ago, transferred to North Carolina. Legend Cavazos transferred to North Carolina. Cavazos said, hey, he transferred during spring practice, and he ultimately wanted to do what? Go to a place where he could play football quicker than he would have played at the Ohio State University. So all of these things are things that kind of, it's a process. There's a process these coaches are going through. From Ryan Day to Jim Knowles to Justin Fry to Larry Johnson to Tony Alford. There is a process all these coaches are going through. And the process is working itself out. But also, keep this in mind. A competitive practice against a bad football team shows that the team is even, but they still might be bad. Like, they're still a bad football team, but they're kind of bad across the board. They can compete against each other, but they cannot compete against the bigger teams or even like some of the mediocre teams in college football. A competitive practice against a team that's 8-4, 7-5 regular season, maybe 9-3 in a good year. Okay, you're good, maybe a little bit above average, but you're still that team. Now, a competitive practice against a team that's elite, that is in the running for a college football national championship, that's what you want. But saying a practice is competitive is great. Saying a competitive practice is a team that is going to be in the running for the national championship based off that performance without gauging it against anybody else, I don't know if you can really do that. I think Ohio State has a lot of talent, a lot of elite talent. But just saying a team has a competitive practice does not mean that players in the team that was competing in that competitive practice is an elite team. I say all that to say this. I think Ohio State has a lot of talent. I believe they can be elite in 2023. I don't know if that's going to happen in the fall. I don't know how these new O linemen, new D linemen, new players, new quarterbacks are going to play in the fall. I don't know. That is something that's literally TBD, to be determined. So a competitive practice is great. But we got to wait and see how the team stacks up against other teams in college football to see exactly how the Buckeyes play when they play and it's time to put the jerseys on every Saturday in the fall. A guy who might not be putting a Buckeye uniform on anymore, it's Brice Sensabaugh. I believe he made a wise decision about his future playing college basketball at the Ohio State University. What decision did he make? We'll discuss that next right here on Locked on Buckeyes. This episode is brought to you by Billiards Plus. Billiards Plus has the best selection of pool tables, game tables, shuffleboard tables, and more, and the best service in Central Ohio. Billiards Plus also can set you up with a brand new top-of-the-line grill that will last for generations. We all know how hard it is with the supply chain issues this year and getting certain things shipped on time. So when it comes to ordering that one big gift for someone you love, check out Billiards Plus and get there early this year. Billiards Plus carries the best pool tables from Brunswick, Olahausen, Canada, Billiards, and more. Plus, top-of-the-line grills from PK, Napoleon, Memphis, and Le Griddle. That will be the last grill you own. Seriously, these grills stand the test of time. No matter the season, Billiards Plus has you covered for all your indoor and outdoor entertainment needs. Visit their showroom on Dublin Center Drive in Dublin. Check them out at billiards-plus.com. Billiards Plus, family owned and operated for generations. Sports betting is now legal in Ohio, and Locked On has the perfect show to help new and seasoned gamblers. Download and subscribe to Locked On Bets for daily picks and analysis wherever you get your fine podcasts. Ohio State's basketball team is no stranger to players that are elite and leaders on the team, statistical leaders, literal leaders as far as the leadership qualities that they possess, and them portraying them and displaying them on a consistent basis. They're no stranger to the best players on the team, testing the waters in the NBA draft. And Brice Sensabaugh, I said earlier in the season, he was more pro-ready at probably the end of December than Malachi Branham was at that same time a year ago. Brice Sensabaugh has put his name in the NBA draft, but ultimately he can still remain at Ohio State. Remember Dwayne Washington Jr. went through the pre-draft process, and I said, "Oh, Junior, you're not ready. Oh, Junior, you're not ready. No, you're not ready." And what do? You kind of test things out. E.J. Liddell. I remember E.J. Liddell went through the pre-draft process a couple years ago. Junior ended up staying in the draft. I don't believe Junior got drafted. I believe he got a two-way contract with the Pacers. And I want to say last I heard he was with the New York Knicks, Dwayne Washington Jr. that is, but I'm not sure if he is still there on that two-way deal. So E.J. Liddell, a couple years ago. Liddell went through the pre-draft process, and I'm sitting here saying, no, man. Like, I don't know how your game translates. I am not sure how you as a basketball player translate to the NBA. E.J. Liddell went through that pre-draft process a couple years ago, got feedback from NBA coaches and scouts, and even Chris Holtmann was involved, and kind of realized, hey, maybe it's the best decision for me to stay in school. Liddell ended up staying in school, staying at Ohio State a year ago. The basketball team didn't see the success that they wanted to see, but ultimately, him staying in school, I do believe, was the best decision for him. A little bit more talent on Ohio State a year ago, we may have seen a different outcome than Ohio State and Chris Holtmann, that marriage that we have right now in Columbus, the basketball team that Holtmann leads getting knocked out of the tournament, the NCAA tournament, in the first weekend. I want to say Ohio State lost to Villanova last year in the second round of the NCAA tournament. So Brice Sensabaugh, to me, him declaring for the NBA draft, he made a wise decision. Now, this news came out on Saturday, and it came out in the midst of Ohio State scrimmage. You may say, Jay, why didn't you fit it in yesterday? That scrimmage was a big deal. And football is king at Ohio State. We got plenty of space to talk about all the things going on at the school. And so Brice Sensabaugh, him deciding right now to test the waters a little bit. See if he should go to the NBA or stay in college. It's good, man. Because the only thing you're going to be able to do is figure out the feedback. Like, you're good here. 6'6", 235, solid build out of Orlando, Florida, Lake Highland Prep, and a really, 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 really talented young man. Averaged 16 points this season, 5 rebounds, 1 assist, half a steal, which might be a shock because he really wasn't not the best defensive player at all. Shot 48% from the field, 41% from downtown. I mean, he was a bright spot, and I really wonder if Chris Holtmann didn't alter his spot and say, oh, out of the starting lineup. Oh, in the starting lineup. Oh, you're going to be on the bench. You're going to be out of the bench. Remember, he started the year, and I remember the first 3 or 4 games, maybe 5 games. I'm like, Sensabaugh's too good to be on the bench at Ohio State. He ended up starting. He ended up, what happened? He started a little bit, and he got put on the bench. So Chris Holtmann ended up saying, playing better defensive guys in the Big Ten Conference. We needed to change things up, and that was putting Brice Sensabaugh on the bench. Now, I don't think that was a wise decision, but that was Chris Holtmann's thought process and kind of rationale about that very thing. The defense is what's lacking. It's one thing lacking. I really think offensively, kind of need to polish some things and fine-tune some things and be a little bit more crisp with the decision making. Maybe dribbles, the mid-range game. Mid-range game is phenomenal. Don't get me wrong. But be a little bit more crisp in that movement. I truly wonder if the NBA people will overlook Sensabaugh's deficiencies on defense and say, hey, come on in. You're going to be a guy. We're going to be able to help you out. You have the tools right now. Here's where you might get drafted in the NBA, and let's go on and see if this is the right thing for you. Ultimately, I think Sensabaugh should stay in school. I was more on him going to the NBA early in the year. But first 8-10 games, that's cool, buddy. Big Ten schedule means something to me. Even though the teams are not some of the better teams in the country, the Big Ten schedule means something to yours truly. Brice Sensabaugh, though, making a wise decision, man. Go test the waters. It's phenomenal. It's a great opportunity that you have as a college basketball player. There's a deadline. They're always tweaking this thing. I believe there's a deadline, I believe, end of May, early June, to where you need to have an agent signed by that certain point. If you don't have an agent signed by that certain point, you can go back to college. And I truly hope go through that process. But stay in school. Stay in school. Not only because Ohio State needs a guy like him on the team next year, but I think it's the best way for him to make the most money once he's drafted to the National Basketball Association. Out of here on a Tuesday. Love doing this stuff with you 5 days a week. We're going to be getting more NFL draft stuff coming up this week. One show specifically about CJ Stroud and my guy Ryan Roberts from Rise and Draft Scouting will be here, and we'll be talking about having a pre-draft conversation about Stroud and what Stroud brings to the table. Also going to try and get our guy John Garcia Jr. back on the show, and ultimately get some more updates about Buckeyes, players that the Buckeyes are recruiting, and if they will be Buckeyes in the fall, if they'll be committing to Ohio State over the next few months, as it's going to be a big month of recruiting in June. Few months away, right around the corner. I cannot wait to see what the guest list is like during these official visits and how many commits we get after these visits are completed. Out of here on a Tuesday. You can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. You can send all of your emails to jstevens317@gmail.com. Also, hey, shout out to all of y'all. I saw Ohio State softball had a sold-out stadium over the weekend. Hey, shout out to y'all. I would love to get out there and watch the young ladies play the softball. Actually, working to try to figure out a time to make that happen. But, hey, if you're out there watching the young ladies play the softball, hey, shout out to you. If you're not out there yet, go check them out. Check out all these spring sports. These guys are really talented, and they're representing the school that you love.